When you create a pivot table position that illustrates a point well, you can print the pivot table and include it in a physical document. In this movie, I'll show you how to print your pivot tables. First, you can preview how your pivot table will look when you print it by going to the Backstage view. To do that, click the File tab, which displays the Backstage view, and then click the Print item to display the print page. And on the right side of that page is a print preview. So you can see the pivot table and also the data comment that is over to the side, which would also be printed. So let's say that I just want to print the pivot table and not the comment over on the side. To do that, I click the Home tab of the ribbon, then click the Options tab, and then click the Select button, and click Entire Pivot Table. So what I've just done is selected the entire pivot table. Now I can go to the Page Layout tab, click the Print Area button, and click Set Print Area. When I do, and I'll just click away from the selected cells to release the selection, you can see that Excel has dashed lines around the area that was selected, indicating it's a print area. And in fact, if we go back to the Backstage view and the print page, you can see that the comment text over on the side will no longer be printed because it was outside of the print area. So now let's switch back into the document proper, and I'll just click the Home tab. Now let's say that I want to have the titles appear on each printed page, and let me show you what I mean. First, I'll create a page break here on row 18, and my goal is to split the values from 2009 and 2010 onto two separate printed pages. So I've clicked the row header, and then I'll go to Page Layout, click Breaks, and then click Insert Page Break. And when I do, you can see that there will now be a page break between December 2009 and the summary for 2010. And if we go to the Backstage view, File, then Print, you can see that we have the values on page 1, that's 2009. And then if I go to the next page, you can see the values for 2010. But what you also see are that there are no headers for 2010. So for example, I might not remember that the first column is firm A and the second column is firm B because those labels don't appear. So what I'll do now is set up my worksheet so that those labels will appear when I print the pivot table. To do that, I'll go back into the main document and I'll just click the Home tab and then right-click any cell in the pivot table and click Pivot Table Options. Then on the printing page of the dialog box, check the Set Print Titles box and then click OK. Now when we go back to the Backstage view and preview our print job to come, we'll see that on the first page we have our headers, and then on page 2, they appear as well. There's one other option I'd like to show you when it comes to printing pivot tables, and that is that you can turn the expand and contract controls on or off. In other words, you can print them or not. So I'll click the Home tab again to go back into the pivot table, right-click any cell within the pivot table, click Pivot Table Options again, and then on the printing page, you can select whether to print the expand and collapse buttons that are displayed on the pivot table. In this case, it's turned off, which is usually the better choice, but I'll just show you what they look like when you have them turned on. So I'll check that box, click OK, and then go back to Print Preview. And you can see that the button will appear when you print the worksheet. Printing a pivot table seems like a straightforward operation, and it usually is. That said, you do have a number of options when it comes to printing your pivot table. You should experiment with the different ways you can control how your pivot tables print so you can get exactly the output you want.